Hey there, and welcome back. We're about to start the first of four workshops and talks that we're going to do for the rest of the afternoon. Today, I'm going to be your track leader, and I'm also delivering the first workshop, which we're going to start in just a second. So today's the first three workshops today are actually a progression on that build off of one another. The one that I'm going to be delivering starting in about 30 or 45 seconds is called Finding Your Revenue Formula. And it is meant to help you figure out what your business model is, what is the math equation that makes up your business model, and what are all the things that you need to do or prove in order to see if you're right. Now, if you're the CEO or founder of a business, you can apply directly to your own business. If you're not, if you're someone who is an employee of a business or looking for a gig or just trying to learn what this startup world is all about, what I might encourage you to do is think about the company that you're in, or the company you used to be in, or even if you've worked in a coffee shop, you can just apply it to that. I'm actually going to be putting you all to work. So I'm going to be doing some talking today, and there's going to be a couple of times where I'm going to actually stop, and you all are going to do a little work for roughly 3 to 5 minutes. And the session in its entirety will be about 40 minutes. We'll be ending at about 1:40 with the next session starting right around 1:45. So with that, why don't we jump right in? Okay, so what is a revenue formula? Oftentimes when I ask this question, the responses I get are usually something around sales, like, oh, it's how we make money, or it's what our sales model is, or it's what our sales process is. But actually, a revenue formula is much more broad than that. What a revenue formula is essentially the mathematical equation of your business, which means that it impacts every single part of your business impacts it, whether it's product or technology or sales or marketing or finance. And even if you run a coffee shop, there is still a revenue formula to your coffee shop, and every aspect of your coffee shop will be impacted, from ordering beans, figuring out where you're ordering beans from, what kind of machines you're going to use to make coffee. So as you think about what your revenue formula is today, I want you to think holistically about your business. And this is our intent here, is to figure out what is the math equation to run your business. And a couple of things that I really want to point out. It is hard and time consuming to figure out what your actual revenue formula will be at scale in your business. And so regardless of your stage, but especially today, if you're still an earlier stage, what you have is a hypothesis. You may feel really strongly that you're right, but until you have lots and lots of data to prove it, all you have is a hypothesis that you're trying to prove. And your job is to prove or disprove whether or not you're right as quickly as possible. And so what we're going to try to do here today is figure out all of the things that you either need to do, collect data on, or prove in order to see if you're headed in the right direction, with the following two workshops given by Cody and Trevor to help you figure out what you do when and next, and how do you know if you're right or wrong. And I like to throw this slide in here is to point out that it sometimes takes a really, really long time. I've used this framework in several businesses that I've been a part of over the last 20 years. And there's been instances where it's taken 6, 7, 8 years to figure it out. And that doesn't mean that the company didn't have revenue. And an example that I like to use here is when I joined a company called Businesscom, I was acquired into it. The Business.com was doing $7 or $8 million in revenue at that time. And there's a couple of things that clicked into place over the course of my first 6 or 9 months there. The biggest one being figuring out what our revenue formula was as a business. And once we figured it out, in that short amount of time, actually in the next 18 months, we went from about $6 or $7 million in revenue to almost $80 million in revenue, because we suddenly understood the drivers of our business. But for the first 6 or 7 years, the company was making money, but we didn't really know how to do that in a repeatable fashion. So that's part of what our goal is today. So the point of this slide is really to say, it's going to take a lot of time to really collect the data that you have to know you're headed in the right direction. But when you are headed in the right direction, not only do you have repeatability in your business, but you have predictability in your business, which is what we're all striving for to reach maximum growth. And so I want to start by giving you 2 examples so that I can ground you in what you're going to go ahead and try to do today for your businesses. So the first example that I like to use is Business.com. And I'm going to walk you through what each of these values mean for both examples so that you understand what we're talking about. So Business.com was a marketplace that connected small and medium businesses that were selling products and services with other small and medium businesses that were buying products and services. So it was very important that we figured out how to match the right small and medium businesses with one another at the right time when they were ready to buy. And so now I'm going to walk you through each value in the equation of visits times coverage times conversion rates times CPC equals revenue, which was our revenue formula. So visits is what you might think it is. It is the number of people that went to the Business.com website. Coverage was the percentage of pages on Business.com where we had at least one piece of content that a visitor could engage with. So if I was a visitor and I typed something in and I showed up on a page and there was at least one piece of content on that page had coverage. If I typed something in and I went to a page and there was nothing, then we had no coverage. Make sense? Conversion rate was the rate at which visitors to the Business.com website engaged with the content that was on that page. So as an example, if I go to Business.com, I type in a search, say for printer cartridges, I get a page that has some information about printer cartridges, including some ability to buy printer cartridges, and then I click on something, then I have converted. If I don't click on anything, then I didn't convert. And then finally, CPC. This was how Business.com made money. So if you're familiar with how Google AdWords work, we had the same model back in 2005, 2006, 2007. So if I was a visitor to Business.com and I typed in printer cartridges, I would get a page coverage that had a bunch of information on printer cartridges. I then decided to click on one of that pieces of content. That means that I converted. And then whatever the advertiser paid Business.com was how much money we made. So there was some content that might have been free because it was informational. And then other places I might have been able to buy. So if I clicked on something that the advertiser paid Business.com $1 for, then Business.com would make $1. And then you can see at scale how we would understand how to drive revenue to our business. The second example, Chowbotics, this may be a little simpler to understand how the model works, but as we dig into how to figure out whether or not we were right or wrong, you'll see that there's actually a lot of complexities in this model as well. So Chowbotics are robots. They look like vending machines and they make fresh salads. So our model was a SaaS model, salad as a service. And the way that we made money was the number of units, so the number of salad robots that we had out in the world, times the cost per month that we were being paid for our salad robots to be out in the world, multiplied by the number of months those robots were out in the world. So if I had one robot out in a cafeteria for 12 months and I made $1,000 a month, I would make $12,000 for that robot. Make sense? Great. So why is this important? I'm going to take you through a couple of slides that are going to probably point out the obvious to you, but I really want to drive it home. And then we're going to get into you all doing a little bit of work, either on your own businesses or theoretically on something that you want to be thinking more deeply about so that you can take this and hopefully make it useful in the future. So a revenue formula is important because it gives you a very clear understanding of the drivers of your business. So that's not only that the values that you saw, but all of the things in your business that will actually make those values move up or down. And you'll know what's important. And when you know your revenue formula, it's important because it gives you the ability to understand, measure, focus, and prioritize and leverage the most important parts of your business. And something that I want to also emphasize is it tells you what to ignore. So as you think about your revenue formula and your business and starting to grow at scale, It helps you understand if you're spending time on something that doesn't impact directly or indirectly your revenue formula, you have to step back and ask yourself, why am I or why are we working on this thing? Either do we need to revisit our revenue formula, or do we need to not do the thing that we're doing? And so this is really important because especially as an early stage company, time is your biggest asset. And the more time you can spend doing the right things, the better chance you have at being successful. And at the end of the day, the right revenue formula, it really does give you maximum control and understanding of your business. You truly understand the repeatability, the predictability, and the way to make it grow faster. So how do you figure out yours? This is where I'm going to start to stop talking and allow you to do some work. So the next slide that I'm going to show you is an example of what you're striving for at the end of this exercise. And then we're going to step back and you're going to start to piece it together. So what you see here is using business.com, the revenue formula for business.com as an example. So if you look at the top, you see visits times coverage times conversion rate times CPC equals revenue. And what you'll notice is that each color-coded line goes to something. So let's use visits as an example. Visits drives to a left column, which has direct, paid, trade shows, PR, and radio. These are examples of drivers of visits to the business.com website. And same for coverage. If you look at sales and product and technology and Google and marketing, these are ways to think about driving coverage to the business.com website. And then if you go back to the left and you look at the word direct, so you have visits is a value, direct is a driver. And then if you look at the line that's going from left to right, you see SEO, email, blog, Twitter, and LinkedIn. These are sub-drivers. So what we're going to do today is we're going to map our revenue formulas, and then you're going to pick one driver and come up, one value rather, and come up with 5 drivers for that value. And then you're going to pick one driver and come up with 5 sub-drivers for that value. And when you leave here today, you should go back and do this entire exercise for yourself, because when you map it like this, you're actually able to take a look and see everything that you need to be thinking about and working on. And if you're able to stay for the next workshop by Cody Sims, he'll help you take all of this and start to make sense of it so that you can prioritize it and figure out what you need to do now and next. Okay, so we're going to jump in. And again, you're not going to build this entire thing out today. What you're going to do is you're going to pick one value, one driver, and one sub-driver. And the other thing I want to point out is there are 2 things I want to point out. One is there are cases where you may have sub-drivers, and that's okay. And I leave it to you to decide what level of detail you want to actually break it down to. I usually stop here because then I understand if I pick direct, visits, direct, and SEO, I know, okay, now there's a project plan that I need to build out for SEO, which is essentially all of the sub-drivers. And the other thing I want to point out is sometimes you have more than 5. Sometimes you may feel like you have less than 5. And I encourage you to always try to come up with at least 5. Be creative in the way you're thinking about it, because I guarantee you there's more than 5 things that are going to drive anything. Otherwise, it's probably not that important. So it's your way of starting to think about what are the things that you need to do, think about, prove, and collect data on. Okay. So for this next bit of exercises, we're going to take some time. I'm going to not talk a lot for 3 minutes, 3 times, as you start to go and do some of this work yourself. Okay, so I encourage you to do this. Feel free to take a picture of the screen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the previous screen, that rainbow one, while the exercises are on so that you have a guide. But keep in mind that your business is going to be very different than business.com or Chalbotics. And so while there might be some attributes that are similar and you can use it as a guide, really think critically about your business. So I'm going to start the timer now and take 3 minutes, and I want you to come up with what you believe your revenue formula is. And the other thing I want to stress as you get it started, and I just started the timer, the other thing I want to stress is there isn't a wrong answer right now if you don't know emphatically what it is and can prove it with data. The idea here is to draw a line in the sand so that you can start to have something to test against and figure out over time, how do you get to the right thing? Okay, so we've got a little less than 3 minutes left. I'm going to mostly stop talking and I'm going to let you get to work. So on my end, there'll be a little awkward silence. Hopefully for you, you've got your head down and you're scribbling out what you believe your revenue formula is today. And I am going to mute because there's vacuuming in the background that I don't want to distract you with. But I'll come back online to talk as soon as the 3 minutes is up. We got about 1 minute left. And again, if you haven't figured it out yet and you're stressing about it, don't stress about it. The important thing is to have a theory, even if you're sure it's not right, because it gives you a baseline to start to think about and test the things that are going to ultimately get you on the path to repeatability and predictability. Okay, 15 seconds until we're going to move on to the next part of this exercise. Okay, great. Good job. If you didn't finish, again, don't stress it. The idea is to have a place to start, not this is not going to be your finish line. So the next thing we're going to do, and again, I encourage you to take a snapshot of the screen so that you have this for later on. But the next thing we're going to do is we're going to pick one of the values and we're going to come up with 5 drivers for that value. And I'll put it back on that rainbow screen right after I explain this. So again, you have that guide. And I'm sorry that I didn't do that last time. I just forgot. But I'll put it back this time. So in this example, if you remember, the revenue formula here is visits times coverage times conversion rate times CPC equals revenue. And we're going to pick visits as our value. And we're going to come up with 5 drivers for visits. And in my example, those 5 drivers are direct traffic, paid traffic, going to trade shows, spending money on PR, and buying radio ads. So we're going to take 3 minutes again here. This is, if the last one felt like you had more than enough time, this one will probably feel like you need more time. If you find yourself with extra time, come up with more than 5. Likely is, in most cases, there are more than 5 things that drive each value. And if there aren't, then pick a second value and keep working on it. So I'm going to start the timer now, and I'm going to put the rainbow slide back on. And I'm going to let you all get to work. And just coming back in for a second, as you think about your drivers, and I know I've probably said the same thing either in almost the same words or differently, the way to think about it is, what do I need to do in order to move the value? What do I need to do if I want to get more visitors to the site? That could be tactics that you're using. It could be things you need to build. It could be data you need to collect. There's no limit other than your own imagination to what could be a driver for one of your values. And the other thing I want to point out, and if you look at this, you'll see examples of this. And this is a real example, by the way. There will be times where there will be drivers and sub-drivers across multiple values. That's great. Don't shy away from it. It just means that there are things that can drive multiple values, and there also means that there are some dependencies in your business, and it helps draw all those to your attention. So with that, we've got about 50 seconds left. I'm going to stop talking and let you keep going. And again, don't stress if you don't finish it. This is about starting the journey, not finishing the journey today. Okay, about 10 seconds. So write down that last thought, and then we'll move into the last part of the exercise. Okay, great. So now we've written out our theory for our revenue formula. We've picked one value, and we have come up with 5 drivers for that value. And in our case, we picked visits, and we came up with 5 drivers: direct, paid, trade shows, PR, radio, or whatever your 5 plus are. And now we're going to pick one driver, and we're going to come up with 5 sub drivers for that driver. So in the case of this example, I'm picking paid, which means that I'm going to use paid advertising to drive visits to business.com. And the 5 sub drivers in this example is Google, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, ad network. Obviously, there could be so many more ways to drive paid ads to business.com. These are just the 5 for the example. So I'm going to start the timer again. I'm going to give you 3 more minutes. Again, you may feel like you don't have enough time. That's okay. You can take this exercise and keep working on it over time. And if you find yourself with more than enough time, you can either find more sub drivers or pick another driver and come up with more sub drivers for that one as well. Okay, I'm going to start the timer now, and I'll see you in 3 minutes. Okay, we've got about a minute left, and hopefully what this is starting to unlock in your brain is a couple of things. One, there are things that are going to be super obvious to you, right? Like, yeah, duh, of course, I knew we needed to do X, Y, and Z. But the other maybe two things is, one, it's starting to unlock things that you maybe sort of intuitively knew but hadn't articulated. Oh, shoot, there's stuff that we have to do. And equally as important, how things start to interplay with one another. So we've got about 45 seconds left, and then the exercise will be done. And I'll sort of take you into what to do next and how to think about it. And I'll talk also really quickly about how, if you have questions, how you can get in touch with me. Okay, that's time. And so now what I want to do is we're actually done with the exercise. And what I'm realizing is normally when we do this, it takes 45 minutes to an hour to go through this workshop, and then there's a bunch of follow-up. But we don't have the opportunity for Q&A here. So you probably have, some of you out there probably have some questions, and maybe even are hoping to get a copy of the deck. So let me address both of those things quickly, and then I'll talk to you about this last slide, and again, how that ties into the next workshop that Cody Sims will be delivering in just a little bit. So the first is, because we don't have the opportunity for Q&A here, I'm going to give you my email address, and feel free to email me a question or questions if you have them. I don't know how many emails I'm going to get. It may take me a little while to get back to you, but I do want to offer that to you. So my email is very simple. It's just amos@techstars.com, amos@techstars.com. So as you're going through this, if you have a question, feel free to just email it to me, and I'll do my best to get back to you in the next few days. And the other thing is, there's been a couple of requests for the actual presentation. And the quick answer is yes. The slower answer is I need to clean it up in order to pass it out to you all. But I'm going to work with our technical host in a way to get that in the hands of anybody who's looking for a copy of it. And then maybe a follow-up to that is, in the spring, in April, myself, Cody, Trevor, and Troy Henikoff have a book coming out. This will be an integral part of the book. So it's not available for pre-sale or anything like that yet, but you can keep that in mind for the future as well. So getting back to the workshop and figuring out your revenue formula. When I'm building businesses, and the way that I work with the companies that go through Techstars is, this is one of a couple of really core pieces to figuring out if we're on the right path and what our business actually is. And so in Techstars, we use this as a basis for every KPI meaning we say, what is your revenue formula? Has it changed? Because they do change over time. And what are you working on this week that somehow directly or indirectly impacts one of the values? And what you'll notice on this slide is it says pick one subdriver to work on this week. I am a big believer that no business, even a big business, even a company like Apple or Home Depot or Dell, can really only work on a couple of things at a time and do them well. And so what I encourage founders to do, especially early on, is pick one thing to work on. What do you believe today is the most important thing that you can go do or prove in order to start to prove whether your revenue formula is correct? Now, important here is that you're doing a couple things. One is you're really focused on making sure that the thing you're doing actually matters, but you're also building a muscle and cadence around experimentation throughout the entire company, so that as you get really good at these and you take something from experimentation and learning into practice, over time you can do 2, 3, and sometimes more things at once as you experiment and have different strategic initiatives. But what I encourage you to do, since this is new, is just pick one thing to work on, just one, and figure out what it is you're going to work on and how you're going to measure if you're right or wrong. And so that's a good lead into the next 2 workshops. The next one, driven by Cody Sims, will help you take all of this and more and figure out what it is you should be working on now and next. And then if you hang on for Trevor's workshop in 2 workshops from now, he will help you figure out how do you identify the right KPIs, short term and long term, so that you know whatever you're working on is heading you in the right direction. So with that, that is the end of our this workshop. There is one question. So I did get a question that I'm going to share. I'm going to read the question out loud, and then I'll try to answer it. What are some of the things businesses always forget to keep in mind when finding their revenue formula? I think there's maybe 2. The first thing that businesses forget to keep in mind is that this is a lot broader than just sales. And it's really easy as founders to get sort of into the zone of, I just need to sell, I just need to sell, I just need to sell, or I just need to build product, I just need to build product, I just need to build product. Figuring out how those things work together is really, really important, and probably one of the biggest things that gets forgotten. The other thing that I think I wouldn't say founders forget, but founders understandably want to move faster than, which is getting a couple of signals that you might be right and assuming that you're at repeatability. And if you find yourself there, the thing that I would encourage you to do is question how you can disprove whether you're right or wrong. So not prove whether you're right or wrong. It's easy to convince ourselves we're right if we want to, but how do you prove that you're wrong? And if you can't, you're probably headed in the right direction. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for coming. I hope you found this valuable. And if you did, I encourage you strongly to hang out. We'll go live with Cody at, I think, 1:47. His workshop will also be for about 40 minutes. And then after that will be a networking session, which will be at 2:30. And then at 2:45, Trevor will come on to talk about how to take all this and come up with the right KPI so that you can measure not whether you're headed in the right direction. So thank you so much. And I'll see you back here in a little bit to introduce Cody.